Good afternoon, everyone. This is Milogenics. My name is Sensei, and I'm here with Master Roshi. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing toxic relationships, and we would like to introduce our guest to the show to help us lead the way. This is Tuoi Dao, a millennial with uh, a millennial from Vietnam who has been coast to coast from California to the Bronx and now lives in Pennsylvania. She attended Penn State University and is actively working towards her master's degree in social work. Uh, Welcome, Tui. Today we're going to be discussing toxic relationships. Um, in your view, uh, Tui, what is a toxic relationship?
Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm very grateful to be here today, and just to kind of go over your question, toxic relationship. This basically refers to uh, relationship, romantic, friendship, family relationships. Um, Relationships that basically connect us and give us a specific meaning, but that can also, um, whenever there is an intense relationship with someone, the ties that are sort of developed can be beneficial or harmful. So when we think of the word toxic, anything toxic means that it basically drains you, it depletes you, it destroys you, and it basically exhausts you. So when we speak of toxic relationship, there's this basically this harm to your sense of self and your sense of worth. So there's this like constant reoccurring worry and fear that you experience. Um, and a lot of times, many people are not aware that they're in these toxic relationships. Um, so it's very important that we kind of, understand that. And that's a really great question.
Yeah, I guess you don't realize it because the shift it's so subtle.
Mm,
We don't really pay mind to it. It is normal to have disagreements in any relationship.
right.
Um, but a lot of times we chalk it off as that, oh, it's what happens in a relationship. We have to agree to disagree sometimes. But if you're constantly, how can I put it? If you're constantly negotiating your values, and bit by bit, this relationship starts chipping away what you stood for,
Right.
then without you realizing, you're creating a new reality through this abusive way of living, and ultimately that becomes your new life. And it all may have happened just with a small disagreement that you felt it was not worth discussing, and then it just kind of took a different form from
Mm.
there. So what are some of the so what are some of the signs? Is there something that I can probably be aware of, so that when I see it, I I can recognize it, because like you said, it's about being self-aware.
Mm.
If you're not self-aware, how can you do anything about it? Is there anything that perhaps you can shed some light in letting us know when we might be in a toxic relationship?
That's a really great question. And that is basically a checklist that you have to kind of do for yourself. And when we speak about creating a checklist and kind of taking a step back and evaluating the process, this applies to, like I mentioned, family, friendship, and romantic. And this is the kind of list that kind of applies to majority of the time all those type of relationships. And just to kind of break it down, some of the common things that people will often experience is It's three of the most important things that tends to happen: physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. Those are the three main things it's a reoccurring pattern. You start to If you start to feel that your partner tells you what you can or cannot do, there's abuse, there's yelling, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You start making excuses for your partner hitting you, cheating on you, emotionally abusing you. You're basically taking the bait for them. You're just saying, you can do whatever, it's fine. I'm going to try to figure this out. How does this make sense to me? And they'll try to make sense of the situation. Um, they often will be very controlling, manipulation. They're dictating what you can wear, what time you should be home. Um, they don't ask for your opinion, and they don't seem to care about what you have to say. There's a lot of jealousy, um, arguments that blow up, fight that gets physical, verbally violent. And in regards to friendships and family, a lot of times they will be envious of what's going on in your life. They will constantly try to make you feel guilty. They will say things that will not be very supporting of you. They don't want to support you. They will do things that eat at you, and they become very exhausting to be around. It gets to the point where you start feeling like you're constantly doing something wrong. Um, they're just basically never sorry. So those are just some of the things, but they all fall into physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. Um, and we all know what that feels like. Some of us, we don't know what physical or verbal abuse feels like. But majority of the time, we all know what one of those things feel like, whether it's verbal, emotional, or physical. And that's basically what toxic is supposed to do to you. It depletes you.
Yeah.
Right.
And Tui, I was watching a video with a doctor that was kind of laying out some of those things, and she described about 10 things
Right.
that, are good signs, and didn't really upon me how subtle these things are, and that was one of the things that Sensei had said before, and it can be as simple as sarcasm.
Yeah.
You know, there's a bitterness to statements that people make about another person. You know, and then that's one aspect of it. It can be disparaging humor. There's another layer of bitterness there to it, where
Mm-hmm.
someone's making fun of what you're wearing, or why are you putting that disgusting perfume on today, and that can definitely have words are power, and that can have a negative self-esteem issue that can bring on to a person, and then consistently, it's not just something that happens one time. It's repeated behavior that this doctor had mentioned that happens in these relationships, and just didn't dawn upon me how small and minute these things can be, but how big of an impact they can have on a person. One of the things that I think most people are uh, sort of familiar with is the chronic anger, the abuse, the physical, aspect of it, of hurting someone. But like you said, there's a mental and that there's an emotional component to it that I feel, obviously, see, the thing about pain is, yes, a woman can get beat up or a man can get beat up, but that's temporary. The verbal and emotional abuse is long lasting, far beyond the actual relationship. If that relationship ended, that can translate into another relationship. So I just thought that was very fascinating, that this doctor was able to list a lot of little, things that we sort of look past. Maybe,
Right.
Sensei, you were at a party and someone's wife or husband made a joke about someone, and we just thought it was funny, but that person actually took it personal, and we
Mm.
just don't realize the extent of the damage that's causing. So I was just curious, about that, about some of the things that maybe you can weigh in terms of things that you've seen that go along those signs in terms of the emotional and the verbal as well.
Right. And you actually taught me something. I see that. I actually see that happening a lot of times, those subtle cues,
Right.
those little red flags that can give you um, so much of a look into the future. And I wish I had kind of had those red flags that I was aware of when I was kind of experiencing what I was experiencing in my life. One of the most important experience I like to share with people is that about, I would say this was maybe 6 years ago. I was in a relationship with a guy who had schizophrenia. Um, when we first met, everything seemed fine. Things were going well. I was in bliss. It was really nice. It was a great relationship and something that I thought was healthy, and finally a relationship that I can say, wow, this is going very well. But through time, things kind of got worse, and he didn't even know he had schizophrenia,
Mm.
and that was the issue. It kind of blew up out of the blue, and he just one day blacked out. Um, the next day, he couldn't remember what happened, and then continuing forward, there was a lot of verbal accusations regarding where I was, what I
Mm.
was really doing. He thought that I was out to get him. He'll always say that I was like the devil, or um, he was. He thought I was a threat to him. So a lot of times, I mean, people who are, I don't know, just kind of to highlight more on this, schizophrenia is a serious and chronic genetically transmitted condition. However, there was some recent studies that said that environment also had to play a factor. And it's basically a split mind, a split from reality. So it involves hallucinations, basically perception of reality that's not true. It involves delusions, which are false beliefs um, about other people, that they're out to get us. And then there's disorganized speech. So oftentimes he'll be mumbling. And it was a very serious situation. And I was, in my early 20s at the time, and he was much younger than me. He was maybe 4 years, 3 years younger than me. Um, and I was just very oblivious to what was going on. I thought that this was something that I can cure him of. I
Mm.
felt like I had to help him because I was like, this is not the person that I met. Maybe there's hope. Maybe I can do something to help him. A lot
Mhm.
of times, what happens in toxic relationships, in my experience anyway, is that you want to be, you think that you can fix this person. The biggest lesson I've learned from this is you cannot fix anybody. They have to make that decision. Ultimately, we go out of our way, or we think that we will never find a person like this. I thought if I left him, I can never find that perfect relationship I once had, which I wasn't thinking about the now. I was thinking about what was.
Mm.
So oftentimes toxic relationship, there's this this thing in our minds that we kind of put a block on, and we're like, we don't look at the bad things that's going on currently. We look at what was great, what was
Mhm.
good. and
Right.
and and I felt like it was a mental trap, you know um even after I broke, we ended things. It's still a trauma to me. It's traumatic in a sense where you kind of re-experience it again over and over again.
Mm.
um So this wasn't just like, toxic relationships can be a very traumatic experience, because a lot of times toxic people, they will suck their energy out of you, and you're dealing with a person who is very um, in a very distressful situation. You can't help this person. Unfortunately, it is a tragedy, and it takes a lot of strength to kind of even leave the relationship, and from experiences in regards to family and friends, I think for me, family, it had a lot to do with culture, because I was raised by a single father he was just this person who was, very strict. There was a lot of verbal abuse going on, a lot of mental abuse, and it came from a place where it's just his culture,
Mm.
and he was probably going through some internal um, issues, psychological issues that I kind of found out later on. But it's like you're growing up in that environment with this person as a child. You listen to your parents and you think that your parents are right. You grow up in this culture that's like, you're supposed to listen to this person. You're not supposed to argue back. You're supposed to like do what is told of you. That is basically kind of my culture. It's very strict. It's like we have to have a certain respect for our
Hmm.
elders, and I was like the opposite, really. I was very rebellious, and I had my own way of thinking, and it didn't go very well. And so that was also very damaging for me. But in a way, I was very aware that this is abuse, in a sense. Um,
Right.
and my friends, I would say, a lot of times you'll know with friendship is if they're constantly making you feel guilty about something. They're gossiping about other people, talking badly about people, bringing drama into your life, um, calling you negative names, bringing you down jokingly, but they think it's a joke. But in reality, it hurts you. And they
Hmm.
never support your goals. They're constantly envious. They criticize your decisions and your relationships.
Mm.
That's what I've experienced, and I think it's a very important thing to share with people.
No, absolutely. And and folks, usually the more serious signs include any form of violence, physical, verbal abuse, or harassment, and that should be dealt with immediately. And if you need to get help right away.
Absolutely.
But because we may think it's something that may pass, and sometimes it just escalates, and it never, many times it doesn't get better. And just like to say, the change has to come from within. It is not something that we can do. Um, I have myself felt like I wear a cape, and I have to save people. And as I got older, I got wiser, and I realized that it wasn't my job to save anyone. Everyone has their own
Mhm.
particular job. But you mentioned also, for me, for example, I've always been a strong man, so physical abuse I've never experienced it, because the people would probably think twice about doing me any kind of physical harm. But the verbal and the emotional is very real. Um, you know, um, one way that I know I'm in a toxic relationship is very simple. It is at its simplest form. Is when I stop being happy.
Mhm.
The moment I start feeling like I'm more unhappy with you than happy, then that means it kind of it's not as balanced as it should be.
Mhm.
Um, if
Mhm.
it's not bringing me joy, and instead it actually is making me sad, is making me angry or anxious. It might even start doubting my senses, because the verbal abuse can be so much, and the emotional abuse can be so much that you start doubting yourself, or you must think wait, maybe I'm wrong. So your senses are off the chart, and you might even start feeling a little bit I guess envious or unhappy when you see other folks that are having a good time, and you feel like it should be you.
And
Um,
Sensei, Oprah's got a
yes.
great quote that I saw, doing some research on this subject, and she says, in terms of your happiness, Sensei, don't settle for a relationship that won't let you be yourself.
Mm,
You know,
awesome.
saw that was like that hits home.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Because
Yes.
and I see it all the time. I don't like it when he does this. I hate it when she does that. And you should be embracing these kind of things. These are the things that make
Yeah.
her who she is, him who he is, as opposed to hating the things that are not exactly
Mhm.
uh, like us. Actually, I've seen friends becoming creating a relationship hating by hating others. Oh, don't you hate what she when she wears this? Oh yeah, I hate it when she wears this. And now all of a sudden they have something in common, and now they become best friends. And a toxic relationship is once again being created, and you don't even realize that you were part of the initiation because of the way you carry yourself. You continue to attract more toxic circles uh, around you.
Mhm.
Um, but with excuse me, with toxic relationships, how can you so you mentioned being aware. I think being aware is the number one key because how can we do anything about anything if we're not aware of it? Um, but how can we prevent something like this from happening? How do I just walk away? Um,
Mm.
I don't know what how can I address a toxic relationship if I'm in one, or how can I address a toxic relationship once I see it coming?
Right.
And maybe it's my way to exit, but I want to do it in an empathetic kind of way. I don't want to be rude.
Wow, that's awesome. Because you mentioned something important, which is how do you do this with dignity? How do you do this um, with some form of morals? Some people easily can just fight back physically, or they just abandon the person, or they do things without thinking about or strategizing the situation. And some people take desperate measures where they commit suicide. This is something that it starts with a big breath. It starts with a big breath, and then it begins with awareness. As you mentioned, yes, it begins with awareness. We have to kind of take a step back and see as it's happening, or whenever it is happening, identify it as a toxic relationship. Or because if you're in denial and you don't want to believe that this is a very toxic situation, you cannot get out of something if you can't identify with it. And two of the things that you basically asked me was, how can you find the courage to leave a toxic relationship? And secondly, how do you prevent it in the future? So for the first question, how, and I ask, how do you find the courage? Because it is a very challenging decision. Because people who are in toxic relationships, they are manipulated. They have been manipulated to the point where like, we start feeling guilty. We become unhappy, but we don't even realize that this has nothing to do with us. So there's that guilt that's in the way. So I say courage because it's not easy. So you feel trapped. One of the first things you do, please at least come to some type of awareness. And if you're stuck in a place where you are not able to really be able to identify if it is or not, or you just can't seem to believe that it is, seek some form of social support. I feel like social support is so important. I have my best friends that I talk to that bring a source of comfort, and they bring into my life rationality, which is what we don't see when we're in love with someone. You
Hmm.
don't see what is ultimately real and what is right for you. That's why our friends and families are the best. You talk to them, they will bring you to your senses. And if they don't, they will at least be there for you so that you can feel comfort, so that you're not in a place that you were when you were with that person. Because according to, there's everyone's heard of fight, flight, and fear. Or what is it? Fear, flight, and freeze. So as you at the very bottom, you are very level minded. There is compassion that exists, there is mindfulness that exists. You're able to be rational. You're able to understand because you're at a very cool, calm place. But once you elevate yourself and go all the way up to flight and then freeze, freeze is a place where your mind cannot distinguish between what's real and what is not, and you start becoming irrational. You can't think, you become numb, you freeze basically. And you go from I can't to I can't. So that's the mental state is blocked, your mind is split. So social support is key. And then also just listening to people's stories about unhealthy relationships. Their experiences can tell you a lot. And paying attention to those little red flags that we were discussing, all the physical, emotional, verbal abuse. And then if find some sort of spirituality in your life, whether that's, taking a walk outside, meditating, yoga, church, whatever it is to bring you to a place where you can feel at peace. Because if your mind is blocked and if you can't reduce that stress level, you're not going to be able to make rational decisions. So ultimately, it starts off with awareness. Awareness cannot exist if your mind is not at the right place. So first thing, take a deep breath, detox yourself, go somewhere where you can find some peace, where you're not in an environment that's toxic. And then once your mind is at peace and you're talking to friends that are supportive, you're watching videos that are inspiring, find a therapist to talk to. Reach out to social support groups. There's a bunch of support groups online. And then they will be able to give you that inspiration. That's very important, I think. And that's what I wanted to talk about when it comes to how do you manage it, and then how do you ultimately find the courage to leave. And that is a very difficult decision. That is your own personal choice. That's a very personal decision. And these are just some of the things that can help. But ultimately, another thing that's very helpful is if you think about that day when you met that person, and think about what were you doing before you met that person. Who were you before you met them? Were you hanging out with your friends? Were you at a better place in your life? Because majority of the time you were much better before that person, or you had the courage to be on your own. So people who have the fear of losing this person, or I can't survive without this person, look back at the moments before you met them. I think that's very helpful. And, I wish the best for those who are struggling with this. Ultimately, it is your decision. But these are just some of the ways that, that you can, prevent that. And it all comes down to personal transformation. You got to focus on how you behave and your own self-control and resilience. I think everyone has resilience. And don't take the bait. A lot of times friends and family, this is what I'm talking to in regards to this, they will make you feel guilty, cause a lot of issues to make you feel that way. Just don't react to it. Basically be a pedestrian. Just kind of watch things go by and don't take the bait. That tends to happen, and then we seek into a place where we start feeling guilty. And setting boundaries.
You mentioned some stuff that was really helpful to me. Because in order for me to get rid of myself some toxic relationships, I did seek spirituality, the
Mm,
support of the family members. Also yoga. I'm an avid yoga
yeah.
practicer, so I do that. I've been doing it for maybe close to 10 years now. Um, and I've also done church. Um, but the you know, but and that's all great when you're around a support system. But sometimes, if you live alone, it's 12 o'clock at night, there's nobody around. And sometimes you have a moment of weakness and you may want to reach out at late in the
Mm,
evening when you're vulnerable, you're by yourself. And So what I do in order, because I know I might have a moment of weakness, whenever I decide to remove myself from a toxic relationship, I delete their number
absolutely.
so that when I have those moments of weakness, even if I go into my phone, the contact is no longer there. So I am forced to flush out this person out of my system and sort of regulate myself once again into uh, into finding myself and into, like you said, who is Sensei? What does Sensei like to do before? Is there maybe new hobbies that Sensei needs to create that fits the new lifestyle as opposed to the old lifestyle?
Mm,
So that's some of the things that I also added to everything that you said. I also added the fact that maybe deleting the number can add another value so that you can make sure to stay in in your path. But how about, when I'm not sure if you got to, you if I may have cut you off, but how do you recognize when something toxic is coming your way and you can dodge the bullet, so to say?
Like the Matrix.
right.
Yes, there you go.
Well, we definitely talked about the little red flags and the subtle cues. Um, Prevention is really what it is at the ultimately at the end of the day. But there's something I also wanted to mention that's important. If you at all feel like this person is dangerous, is hurting you, and like I mentioned, you have to reach out to emergency services. There's trauma informed care out there that can help you strategize your situation, figure out what's best for you, call 911, reach out to those places. Um, that's very important. And like you said, cut everything off, block their number if you have to, take them off of social media, and cutting off all access. I think definitely it's very important. And how do we prevent this? How do we recognize what is toxic? So a lot of times, from my own personal experience, just kind of moving forward in my life because of those experiences, and some people may not even have those experiences yet. Maybe you're just kind of encountering a toxic person and you don't even realize it, or maybe you have had that experience already and now you're encountering a person who kind of shows those signs again. So those little signs are basically, you know, um, kind of feeling like everything you say is doesn't seem to be supported. There is a sense of control over you, whether verbally, physically, like sarcasm. That can be very that can bring down your self-esteem. So when you feel like your self-esteem is being attacked, whether that's feeling like you are not um, a certain person, you're not worthy, you're not beautiful, you start feeling like you have to please this person and they're not supporting you. Um, and I guess for me also from the experience I had, I relied on the trauma that I've dealt with in the past. I relied on how much that experience brought me down. And I looked at all the unhappy times that I was with that person. And it's only a feeling that I can really describe because I was in it. For people that have never been in a toxic relationship and you want to prevent it, I think what's important is constantly always work on your self-esteem. You know, doing things and kind of, even if that means being on your own for a while, focus most importantly on your self-esteem, because I think that's where it ultimately stems from. You choose the wrong people because there is something about us that we need affirmation from or validation.
Right.
And then we start falling into the hands of people that are not right for us. Because when you're in a toxic relationship, this is not something that people who are in toxic relationship, there is ultimately this initial sense of something that they need that's lacking in their lives. If that wasn't the case, people wouldn't stay that long in toxic relationships. There is something within us that we are not happy about. You know, that's the biggest lesson I've learned from this. Once I started working on my self-esteem, I started making better decisions. I started being in a relationship with a guy who's more healthy for me, you know, who cares about my well-being, and who cares if I'm not feeling good, who cares if, you know, something in my life is stressing me out, you know, and who will ultimately want the best for you, um, and not settling. That's also a way to prevent it. Don't settle. Figure out what it is you really want in a partner, and take what you learned from the past, and you know, ultimately set boundaries for yourself. I think that's very important. Learning to say no, learning to say, okay, you know what, this person has so much of what I want, but then that's not what I like. It's so important that they have that. It's important that they share the same values as me. It's important that, you know, they're supportive. You know, it's great that they look good. It's great that they make this amount of income. It's great that they can cook, they can clean. But is that the person that you want for a partner? Is this somebody, are these things important to you? And the things that are important to you, do they have that? And then surrounding yourself around positive people, because having positive people in your life, if you tell them something about a guy that you just met, a lot of times they will, you know, cut you in. Like a good friend would be like, kind of evaluate it a little bit. Be like, okay, can you tell me more about him? What is it that's, you know, I see something a little wrong with the situation. So they will kind of spot what's wrong in your relationship if you surround yourself around that sort of positive support group. And then another thing is to remove expectations. A lot of times we expect so much from people, and then we start feeling like we have to like cling on to this person if they offer that little amount of what we want. So, and then when they don't, it's you know, it's an unexpected experience, and then you start putting yourself in this trauma, this toxic situation where when you start expecting way too much, you know, there's a quote, I believe it's you don't expect a pint person to love on a gallon level. So don't expect this person to change their ways, basically. If you see something going wrong verbally, physically, mentally happening to you, and like if you feel unhappy instantly, you need to kind of look back at it, evaluate this, you know, and don't try to change the person. You know, we can't change anyone. They ultimately, if they're a drug addict, definitely that's a red flag, because addiction, I mean, and I'm not saying addiction because I don't like using that word. A person who is, you know, drug dependent and have a difficult time, you know, letting go of drugs in their life. That's a big sign. You know, that affects their behavior. Drugs affect people's behaviors when it gets to a very chronic level. alcohol, people who drink too much, or, these are things that can affect you ultimately and your safety. So, and once again, you can't change them. We can't say we're going to cure them of this addiction or whatever it is. We can't change people. Ultimately, either you say, we should go our separate ways. It was great knowing you. I really appreciate it. I think that we should definitely go our separate ways. Maybe we just kind of need to work on ourselves, and leave it at that. So those are the some of the more effective prevention methods that have helped me,
Mhm.
and hopefully it can help other people as well.
Yeah, I have direct, I guess you can say, ways that I have developed throughout my life. And usually what I look for is someone with emotional intelligence.
Mm,
To me, emotional intelligence is one of the key factors. With emotional intelligence, we might be able to work things out. And like you said, income, looks, and all of that, that's fantastic. But to me, if you don't have the emotional intelligence to deal with circumstances, because life is going to throw circumstances and challenges at you, and if I see that you get easily irritated with a small challenge, something
mm,
that is so small, and immediately you become abusive and you call me names and you start blaming me, then I realize that at that moment, I can't change you. This is how you deal with stress. You getting volatile, and now you expect me to fix something that I just walked into, because now your problems become my problems. And whenever I see that, I, I don't know if I'm being too drastic, to it, but I usually curtains down at that moment. It's over. Why? Sometimes I feel like why should there be a conversation? Why should there be a dialogue? This is who you are.
mm, mm.
Um,
Yeah.
People get caught up in, oh, let's try to work this out. But the moment this person gets easily agitated, that's going to be the reaction again.
Yeah.
And I have to work through this over and over and over again until this person is able to recognize it, and hopefully make the change. But you know, but I'm not into that stage anymore. I'm into the stage where I understand that nobody's perfect, but if you haven't worked out your emotional competence yet, uh, we're just not at the right, I guess, emotional state of mind for us to create something. Uh, because I'm ready to work things out, and you're ready to not work things out. So there's a disconnect there, and then at that moment, I just say, okay, she can be a nice, how can I put it? Not even a friend, but someone that you just say hi to, and then keep it as that. So I don't know. Do you think that might be a little bit too much, or maybe I should probably give people a little bit more of a chance?
Oh
Because
no,
sometimes
I
I
mean,
feel like I'm a bit
same.
too cold. And this is both men and women. I'm not just talking about potential partners. I'm talking about just anyone that's in my circle. If I see anything that you're the type of person that don't care, especially those folks, to it. Whenever I come across those people that say I don't care, this is what's up, but
Mm,
then at that moment that turns me off, because that's exactly who you are. You're somebody that doesn't care. And when you get agitated, you won't care. You'll say whatever you want to say, and you'll do whatever you do, and then you blame it on that moment, and then this will carry over to the next moment, and you'll
mm,
go through your whole I don't care, because you get agitated, and then it becomes a circle that I've seen way too many times. So that's another one that I whenever I come across folks, men and women that say that they don't care, I just shy away, and I stir away from those folks, because I understand that when
mm,
challenges arises, the way they will address it is by not caring.
mm. I think it's great that you know what you want, because it ultimately, like we mentioned, knowing what we want from a person and knowing our values. I think it came from a place within you because you have certain values. You have certain things that mean that is important to you. Having someone to care and to say this is important is important for you. So ultimately it comes down to I mean, to answer your question, I don't think it's wrong that you did that, and I don't think that's just who you are and what you can tolerate. Everybody has their own, experiences, and it depends on the situation sometimes too. If if it's just somebody kind of showing emotion where they're kind of sad and upset about something, that's a different story, but it's how they carry out that emotion. Are they being verbally violent? Are they saying things that are actually very hurtful? That's a very big flag into the near future that you feel that you just can't help them. If it gets to that point, depending on the situation, I guess I would have to actually see or know more about the situation. But it really depends on the situation. It depends on your values, what you can and cannot tolerate, and what you want ultimately for your own relationship. And I think what you feel is right in terms of your values and what you want, then that is right for you. And that's some people do things differently. Some people, kind of right away just like, you know what, this is not for me, and that's how they do things, and I think that's healthy. But then there are others who give it a shot for a bit and kind of let it sit, and then end things when it gets worse or gets to a point where they can't tolerate it anymore. So it's an individual situation, I would say.
Right. You know, um, this was very helpful. I've learned a couple of tips along the way too. Being in a toxic relationship is something that happens so subtle and so slowly that you never realize it. And this is why, like you said, being aware it helps you. And this, this has to do with friends. This has to do with even family members too, and of course, your particular lovers. I myself, when I was a young man, I had toxic friendships, and that derailed me. And I didn't even realize, you know, that I was in a toxic relationship. I guess because I was in a group where, we supported each other, even though it wasn't in the right way. But we did support each other. We did help each other, and we were there for each other. But I didn't realize that relationship was taking me in a direction in life that was not in a healthy place for me. And as I began to get a little bit older, I realized that if I continue down this path, I'm not going to have much of a future. So I have to let go of my past during my present to prepare for my future. Um,
Mm.
and eventually that's what I did, and I'm glad that I was able to make that choice. But folks, you come across a toxic relationship, if it's abusive, physical abuse especially, seek help immediately, immediately. And if not, follow some of the codes, some of the, I guess, some of the tips that we share with you to help you recognize whether you are in a toxic relationship, and also recognize if there could be a potential relationship coming your way, and how you can dodge the bullet. But Tui, any additional tips that you may want to offer before we end our show today?
Yes, I just hope that everyone just kind of, in order to detox from all this, just find time, I guess from my own personal experience, just find some time to just be on your own. I think that helps so much. Figure out what you want. Figure out your values and what is important to you. And if you're strong in who you are and your values and your own culture and really know who you are, ultimately you will make the right decision. Ultimately, you will have the mental ability to decipher. It's all intuition because of your values. So, I just want people to kind of take away a new perspective on all this. I want to bring a sense of liberation where you can have more control over your life. You just surround yourself around positive people and work on who you are. Find out who you are, find out your values, what is important to you, because that is something you're going to take out. It's a tool that you're going to bring out. It's that resilience and the control that you will ultimately need when you stumble upon people like this.
I like that, Joey. Know your values, all right? Have the courage and take the control back into your life.
Yes.
Is basically what I got out of this. Master Roshi, anything you'd like to share before we end our episode?
No, I would just agree with those things. I think distance also comes into play. I think it's helped me, moving from New York to Atlanta, being able to be away from people and realizing that those people can't rely on me because I'm not so close anymore. I think that's helped to either stem some of those toxic relationships or totally, completely, abolish them altogether. One thing I did want to say is that, one of the things that I see a lot, and I think it goes back to what you guys were saying, is that, when people are dealing with toxic relationships, is that there's these predatory behaviors, I think, right, that develop in people that sort of seek out victims, right? And once you're able to stand up and say, hey, I have these core values that I'm not going to compromise for anybody, right? Even you, no matter if you're a parent or whatever it is, whatever that relationship is, because they are true, honest values, right? You're not going to lie. You're not going to deceive people. You're not going to sort of take abuse, for the sake of someone else. And I think once those things come into harmony, you're able to find your core and sort of be able to deflect people that come your way and try to be those predators and play on your feelings and your emotions and all those things. So once you're able to figure that out, then you're able to release those people, or at least stay away from those people and have good people in your life. And as long as you have good people in your life, good things will happen to you.
All right. Well said, Master Roshi. Tui, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a very informative topic, toxic relationships. We'd love to have you come back in sometime in 2021. Master Roshi, great being with you once again, and Happy New Year to all our viewers. Happy New Year to you both, and have a great day. And if you
Indeed.
like this, one more thing, if you like this show, please make sure to press the like button, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Happy
Bye.
holidays.